Hello.
Hi, Misha.
Hey, Ricardo. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Well, thanks very much for doing this with me. As you know, the book is launching today, June 18th. Lots of months, if not years, waiting for this moment. So thanks for doing this today.
Very welcome. I've been there for quite a part of the journey.
Well, let's do this together then. Let's interview each other then. Let's let people understand why I wanted you to be the person doing this.
Sounds very good. Sounds very good. How should we start? I'm happy to do a
Yeah,
short
yeah, do that, do that.
introduction, and then I have tons of questions to ask about you, Ricardo, and about the book because I read it and I'm very happy to dive a bit deeper, and I think people will love to hear more. But yeah, short about me, I'm Michael or Misha, Bulgarian, Austrian, and my whole background actually started in karate. So I was a Austrian karate champion multiple times, and after that went into entrepreneurship, built different companies. It's free now. We sold the second one, or we launched the second one with the Georgian government. The third one we sold, and now we just started another one where we built heat pumps all over Austria and have scaled to a couple million in revenue over the last half a year. And I think that's kind of the way how you typically talk about the stories of an entrepreneur. What really happens though is that the first company went through shit. With karate, for the first 2.5 years, I was basically just losing fight after fight. And the real story, if you go behind it, was a lot of eating shit, to be honest, a lot of rejections, and that's why I was such a massive fan of your book, Crash Course, and specifically eating rejection, which I think is just a very important part of the journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
But
hopefully there are more fun parts other than eating rejection. But yes, that was a big that was a big part for me. Okay, so how did we meet? Let's refresh my memory.
how do we first meet? Ricardo, you're as my some of the people here might know, a frequent guest at Richard Branson's private island, Necker Island. And I think for me, when I was there for the first time, I'm a huge Richard Branson fan. You were there as well, and we met and had one of the most incredible weeks of my life, at least, on Necker. And then started co-investing, I think quite successfully so far. We invested in four companies together, three last year. Two of these had their Series A from world top funds. And so now we're here, have gone through a lot together. And I was there, I think, from the beginning, since you had this. You were, when we first met, you already had this idea of launching the book. But Ricardo, maybe we can turn the whole thing around a little and hear a bit more about your story and how you ate rejection on the way to becoming an author.
So yeah, I think so. Talking about the island, the last time we were there, a couple of months, lots of entrepreneurs there felt the same core value of freedom. I never really knew what being an entrepreneur was. I never knew much about building companies, but I guess I had this desire for freedom, and I eventually thought that entrepreneurship was very aligned with my skills, and it could get me to where I wanted to get. That's why I started this company with a friend. We did toys in the shape of countries. We thought it was the best way to educate kids about the world from the point of view of play and education. And we were always very optimistic to the point of being naive. We were always looking at the next thing. We will design the product, we will build the product, we will organize logistics, and then um, we will sell the product. I'm not sure I said that correctly, but the problem happened that when we started to sell, we went to sell, and the sales didn't come. So that's when I started marketing effort after marketing effort just to eat rejection for breakfast every morning.
That's very
Yes.
cool.
Very cool. Yes, not so cool. So how do we end up in this book? So in retrospect, so the company did not work out, and I feel like entrepreneurs always we have all heard this idea: if you try, you need to try harder. People give up one day before they succeed. So we always have this motivation to go one extra day, one extra day, one extra day, and we live in this illusion that maybe today can be the day. Uh, but after 6 years, that day had not happened, and I have thought that so many times I was so close. And at one point, you realize that this makes sense for me anymore. I realized that I could be doing other things, and all memories, emotions, lessons came from my 6 years trying to make this company happen. And um, and it was a very healing process, organizing process to put this idea um, in a, how to say, to put this idea, this experience outside of me. And then I also thought that that was an
Mm.
experience that lots of founders were going to be able to resonate, whether they had been successful or not. Because one thing that has surprised me a lot is that founders that are super successful also resonate with this message of overcoming challenges, and they want to feel that their success was earned, because it was. So it's not just only about the success, it's about how hard it was for them to get there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Ricardo, that's extremely true. And I mean, I'm a European. I've been all over the continent, also a lot in the US. And I think in Europe we have a problem much stronger than the US. Failure is seen as something extremely negative. When you fail, you easily become a failure. So you have to always try to make things work so you look successful and you are seen as successful. And this whole journey of losing and failing on the way is not seen as something that positive. I think it's slowly changing. But I mean, how did you manage to go through all these failures and still see the positive and see the whole
Yeah,
positive upside of learning as you went through it?
I think now that you were talking about failure, um, I would think the key message. So in I guess in spirituality, we talk a lot about not identifying with the outside world. I think when you're an entrepreneur and you're doing something so close to your heart, you end up forgetting that you are not your company. And we think we are our companies because we put our money, our maybe family's money, our hopes, our dreams, and we think that if our company is a failure, I am a failure. And I think that's a very key lesson, to have this clarity, not to get drawn by your company. Even if your company, let's say it's the best company in the world and it does so well, you don't want to also come from a place of arrogance. I think it's good to have this, let's say, independent naturality or well-being, regardless of whether your company does well or it doesn't do well. Yes, you may have emotions. I had emotions. It was very hard for me, uh, but we need to be very aware, again, not to get stuck with our company's failure. I think that was one of the big things for me.
That
So
is
sorry,
that's awesome.
yeah. No, I was gonna say, yeah. So yeah, it could be the end of the company. It could be the end of the startup. Maybe the startup doesn't make sense anymore. Maybe you could be doing other things, but that doesn't mean it's the end of you. You have your whole life. You have, yeah, so many other possibilities ahead of you.
Yeah, that's it's extremely true, and I think in the moment it's just so hard to see it very often. I mean, I've been through this whole roller coaster of things are going well and then they're going horrible and going good again, and you fail, and then other times you succeed. I think overall it's always an upward trend, but it's hard to see when you really are down in certain moments. I think it's generally it's just not that common, and I think it's also very hard to really openly discuss your failures. Also for me, I know that like I've been through a lot and it's very important to share that, but it's not always easy to share as an entrepreneur all these downs that you're going through. What made you share your whole story that transparently?
So there's the part of me that's the artist that wants to express what I had inside, but also uh, after I after I closed my company, I was speaking about it with lots of founders, and they all seem to resonate with the story. So I realized that there's if you go to a bookstore, there's hundreds of books about companies, how to how to build a startup, how to hire your first people, how to pitch investors. There's all these how-to books about companies, but we forget about the person who needs to build the company, and we forget to look at the bullseye, which is the person. When the person is feeling confused, um, frustrated, yes, you can tell them you need to work harder, and I'm sure this person knows they need to do more work. But unless they're coming from a lighter state, they're not going to have clarity to make good decisions, to communicate clearly, to have confidence. So the same way that there's lots of books for the company, I feel like entrepreneurs, founders need a book for them, a book that recognizes them, a book that is their companionship book, and a book that also honors them. Because let's not forget that uh, entrepreneurs are putting things out there in the world that would not be there if it wasn't for them. They're not filling a job description and doing what someone else is telling them to do. They're trying to leave their mark on the world. And again, if it
Yeah.
wasn't if it wasn't because of them, you wouldn't be seeing their work outside in the world. So I also wanted to recognize them. So again, too, I wanted to give them tools, tell them that I care, but also recognize how incredible it's what they do.
Yeah, and I think like having read the book, it's truly inspiring to see a true story like that because typically you just would not share it that openly. And I think it's inspiring and it's something that people need to do way more. Yeah.
No, I was going to ask you what are things in the book that resonated, and other parts in which you feel no, my story is very different.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that really resonates, I mean, as I shared, I was a karate fighter. So for a big part of my life, I went from competition to competition, city or country to city or country, and traveled as a fighter. And for the first 2.5 years, the main thing I did was just get kicked at these conferences. And then what I basically learned, what my dad said back then is, Misha, it's from these failures that you learn the most. And I think there's always two ways to, like when you go into a fight, and I think entrepreneurship in many ways is a fight as well. There's two ways you get out. One is you've won. The second is you've learned a shit ton. And I think the second one in the longer term often is more valuable. And I think, like for me personally, especially the chapter eating rejection for breakfast, is basically that's what entrepreneurship is. It's you getting used to eating rejection, to standing up again, standing up again, standing up again, defying all odds, and just not giving up. And very often it doesn't work out still. But I think this attitude is what in the longer term, and what also in your case, brought you to success in life. I think it's this, no matter what, I'll just keep going. And then after this venture, you did something again. And I know what you've done after the life that you've described in the book. I mean, you're a very successful investor and entrepreneur, and it's exactly the spirit of eating rejection and not seeing it something that's horrible, but standing again and doing it despite all the negative things that happen. That makes you a true entrepreneur. And I like just reading through the story for me was something that was really inspirational and just reminded me of so many parts of the journey. And I was just amazed by how openly you wrote about this,
Well,
especially considering where you are now.
but thank you very much. So I'm gonna say as I've talked to other founders, a few friends that have the book is launching today, but I have a few friends that have already read the book. Most of them are founders. I realized I'm sure there's lots of kinds of readers, but two come to mind. There's the
Yeah.
readers that read a book as if it was a blog post, just looking for lessons. What can I learn today that I can implement this weekend so my revenues grow at 30% in 2 weeks? So very action value driven, but I think they miss the story, the being taken, carried, and being taken by the whole story. And from what I am reading, it looks like you got more out of the book because you enjoy the whole. You weren't looking for specific things. You would just, again, when we let go, we surrender. You went with the story, and it looks like you enjoyed it. So thank you very
I
much for that.
I really did. I 100% did. And something that I think is very interesting and something you say a lot, and is part of the book, is that normally we just talk about a company. And what's really important is to talk about the person behind it and the emotions of this person that stands behind the company. Why would you say we don't talk about the person behind the company and the emotions behind that openly in the normal world?
Wow. That could make, let's see where, so yeah, this is such a great question. I think we are so trained and used to not one looking there and asking the question. We read books that talk about people as if people were, let's say, 100% rational. Um, this is a part that we missed completely. I think, again, because we are used to disregarding this part. We don't know how to address it. We don't have the sensibility. Also, we don't know how we feel about ourselves or about our emotions. So if we're not comfortable with our emotions, how are we going to talk about someone else's emotions? There's so many different factors. But I hope that this book starts bringing yeah starts bringing the attention there, because again, it's not only the well-being. If you care about so much about your company being successful, the better that you feel about yourself, the more energy you have in the morning, the more clarity you have, the more successful your company is going to be. So even if you don't do it for yourself, even if you don't care about your well-being for yourself, care about your well-being for your company's well-being. uh, yeah, what do you think? I guess
That's true.
yeah, I think maybe in the last years, people are more open to this conversation, and I hope this makes a good time for the book. But no, we assume that we're perfectly rational and we are not affected by things, and that's the complete opposite from reality.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and I think also within the company, of course, often you have to be visionary. You have to show where things are going to go, and you have to show security in many ways. But I think showing vulnerability and showing that you go through something that's tough, and showing how you actually are behind the role that you play is really important. And it's something that I try to do a lot in the company. Just be very open, and I think very often this openness is also seen as strength. And that's
Yeah,
something that is definitely changing.
yeah, a lot of quality. Sometimes I feel like we create these debates because having a lot of one quality could mean not having a lot of another quality. You can be vulnerable, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be responsible for what you have to do. You can be vulnerable, share how you feel, move your emotion, but then go back to um, what you have to do. And at the same time, being in connection with your emotions doesn't mean being dramatic and create dramas. So
Yeah,
we need to have a lot of clarity and make distinctions, because usually lots of things are associated that they don't need to be associated. You can take care of yourself, you can take care of your emotions, but then you can be clear, you can be driven, and you can be optimistic. So yeah, that's what I
very
would
true.
say to that.
I love this. Very true. I have one more question I would really love to
Mhm.
hear, because I think we have this time of 15 to 20
Uh-huh.
minutes and we're getting close. But something that I think is really interesting, especially for me, because at some point I would consider potentially writing a book as well. There are some years to go before this moment comes. But what interests
I
me
will
is
interview you. I will interview you. That's what you were gonna ask me. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, then I can skip to
No,
the very last question.
no, okay, let's go.
I will go on further. Yes, what are some interesting things, or the most interesting thing you learned about yourself as you wrote the book?
Well, that would be another. So, so lots of things. So it's a very long process. Lots of people, the same way that startups fail, I realized that some books take years to write, and lots of books don't end up being written. I've seen myself being very. There's a word in Spanish, exigente, which
Yeah,
translates as demanding. I've seen myself being a little hard with myself, trying to find the perfect subtitle. Um, I have the joy and the opportunity to work on the things that I want. I wrote this book because I wanted, so it was my choice. But sometimes I've stressed more about it, and these. So yeah, what I've read is that I still have this hard place in me that that stresses about things going in a certain way. And I sometimes, this may sound ironic, but sometimes I felt that I had to read my own book in order for me to help me navigate writing the book, if that makes sense. Because all this advice that goes for entrepreneurs, it would always go, they would also go for anyone that's starting a creative project, or that's putting himself or herself out there. So yeah, reliving this part of being an entrepreneur with putting a new product out there in the world and exposing myself so much and having this strong desire for the book to do well.
I love this.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Ricardo, thanks for sharing all this inspiration in this book. Really grateful to call you a friend and co-investor very often too.
Well,
thanks for the session here.
No, thank you so much, and very grateful. We'll be in touch soon, and I look forward to doing this interview to you in a couple of years.
Very cool. Thank you, Ricardo. Chat
Thank
very
you.
soon.
Ciao.
Bye, my friend.
Bye.